Hello, my name is Abigail and welcome back to Polyglot Progress. Today I am going to be doing a Q&A. I don't really know how else to introduce this other than that. The last time a Q&A was posted on this channel was actually back at the start of 2018. At the time, Polyglot Progress was 2 people, so Polyglot Progress itself has changed a lot since then. I have changed a lot as a language learner since then. There have been a lot of breaks and pauses for school since then, so I've spent a lot of time off of the internet. And at the time, I also say in the video that we are nearing 8,000 subscribers, and there's now over 17,000 of you. So there's a lot of new people watching this as well. So I thought that a really good way to end the year where I came back to Polyglot Progress and end the first year of me being the only person running Polyglot Progress would be to just kind of sit down and answer some of your questions. I put out an ask for questions about 3 weeks ago, and I ended up getting way more of a response than I was expecting. So I'm not going to be able to answer every single question in this video, but if you asked me a question and you don't end up hearing it in this video, I will make sure that I respond to you at some point this coming week. I'm gonna start off with the question that I unsurprisingly get asked the most, and that is how many languages I speak. But I also got asked a follow-up to this question, which was how do I answer the question of how many languages I speak, which I think is a great question. Honestly, whenever anyone asks me this question, whether it's online or in real life, my answer is kind of it depends. Much like how everyone has a different definition of fluency, everyone kind of has a different definition of what they consider speaking a language, and so it's a little bit hard for me to be able to be like, yeah, I speak this many. I know a lot of people go off of B1, B2 as kind of being the cutoff for when you can start saying you speak a language, and by those standards, I guess I speak 5 languages: English, French, German, Spanish, Italian. I think even if the question were how many languages do you speak at a B1 level, I would feel much better. It's just kind of that vague how many languages do you speak question that kind of stresses me out a little bit, just because I don't really know what you consider, and I feel weird saying that I speak a certain number if then your standards end up being higher than the ones that I'm going off of. So I tend to just kind of understate my language abilities there, I guess. The other thing that I'll kind of jokingly do sometimes is say that I speak between 0 and I guess it's now like 8 languages, just because it does kind of depend on the day as well. There are days where I'm much better with speaking German, there are days that I'm much less good at speaking German. The same thing happens for my English, honestly. I don't think I'm a perfect English speaker. What does the key tattoo represent? So this is the album art from Anne Boleyn's album Lost Songs, which isn't even really a real Anne Boleyn album. It's an album full of B-sides and covers and kind of things that didn't make it onto actual albums. Anne Boleyn became my favorite band when I believe I was 11 years old, and they remained my favorite band throughout kind of growing up, and even though now I say they're more so one of my favorite bands instead of my favorite band, they were my favorite band as I was developing my music taste, and they have this very nostalgic and special place in my heart as a result. The key tattoo isn't really that unique of a tattoo. It's a very common tattoo among Anne Boleyn fans, to the point where they wrote a song lyric about it and all of the band members have the tattoo. It's also probably my worst technically done tattoo, but overall I'm really happy that it is a tattoo that people are asking about. It's something that's that visible because it is really special and very much so feels like it's just a part of me at this point because it's something that I see in the mirror so often. So that's the key tattoo. What was the most valuable part of your French degree? If I were to pick one thing that I feel like I really got out of my French degree, it would be translation stuff. I took 2 classes side by side my sophomore year, where it was a translation class and a workshop to work on translating, and then alongside that a translation theory class. I learned a lot about the theory behind translation, obviously, and the choices that translators make, and I just learned a lot for myself about how I approach translation work and my own techniques that I like to use and the style that I have when doing it. And those were definitely things that came specifically from my French degree and not necessarily through just my French learning in general. I think that was something that I really only got through reading the theory and critiquing other people's translations and having mine workshopped. Have you noticed in your exposure that Asian languages are much more geared towards passing standardized tests, and does this affect your desire to study them? I do think I tend to see people taking the standardized tests associated with Asian languages a little bit more than actually taking the CEFR exams, but I see people posting about levels and goals related to the CEFR exam just as much as I do the JLPT or the TOPIK or any other test. And so since it's the same as European languages, I wouldn't say that that really affects my desire to study them at all. The other thing that makes it so that I don't know why it ever would affect my desire to study it is I'm in control of whether or not I want to set goals based around passing exams and if I want to take exams. So going into studying Japanese potentially in 2021, I have no desire to take the JLPT, and so none of my goals are based around that. Nothing related to my Japanese learning is really going to be related to the JLPT at this point, but at the same time, I am planning in the coming years to take the DELF for French. So the only standardized test plans that I have are for a European language and not an Asian language. So overall, I just feel like tests don't really have any bearing on whether or not I'll want to study a language or not, because I fully get to decide what languages I'm studying, and then with that, whether or not I want to take exams for them. And so I guess overall my answer is no to both. When I first read this question, I actually thought that I had noticed something about that, but again, I think it is just that I follow a lot of people that are posting about their own progress studying for the JLPT or the TOPIK, whereas a lot of the people that I'm following that are studying European languages are posting about the levels they'd like to see, but not necessarily taking the CEFR exams, which doesn't necessarily mean that Asian languages are more geared towards taking a standardized test. It's just that the people that I'm following are happening to or happening not to be preparing for one. And even if they were more geared towards passing a standardized test, I don't think it would affect my desire to learn them or not, because I get to decide if I'm doing that or not. And I'm very sorry if you can hear the lawnmower outside. Unfortunately, it's a little bit warmer outside today, so my neighbor has a reason to go out and mow his lawn. How's roller derby been going? It hasn't. Pre-pandemic, I'd say it was going really quite well for me. I was named the captain of the B team for my league. I was trying to work out outside of practice. I was really excited for the upcoming season. But because roller derby is a full contact sport and probably the least socially distant activity you could be doing, I haven't played since March. So that's really sad. I did not get to experience this season at all. I also see my derby friends online quite a bit. My team has been holding watch parties. We've been doing game nights. I will have Zoom calls with some of my closer friends from Derby, but I haven't seen any of them since March, and I haven't played Derby since March, and I haven't even skated all that much since March, so I'm definitely looking forward to the time that I can get back to it. Favorite word in languages I've studied. So this one also changes all the time. I feel like I tend to actually not have favorite words all that often, so I'm actually not going to answer this for every language, just 2 of them. In German, my favorite word currently is schnuckeli, which is like cozy or snuggly. I feel like the word itself just feels snuggly and cozy and warm, so that's why I like that one. And then in Bulgarian, currently my favorite word is snyag, which is snow. I don't know why, I just really like the way it sounds. Again, it just feels like it means snow. I feel like those tend to be my favorite words as opposed to words that I think sound really cool or things like that. It tends to just be ones where I'm like, that is how that should be said. That feels right. Have you ever been in a country where you speak the language that the country speaks? Yes, and I realized looking at this question that I actually have only visited countries where I can speak at least some of the language. I visited Canada in 2011, maybe 2012. It was when I was in 8th grade. I had just started studying French, and for some reason that's when the school thought it would be a good idea for us to go on a field trip to Canada. I went to France and Germany in 2017. While it wasn't my current German level, and I think I would be much better off visiting Germany now, and obviously there's still a lot of room for improvement, I was at least partially able to speak some German. And at that point, I had already done a year of my French degree, so I definitely was able to speak French when I went to France. In 2019, I went to Benin, which is a French-speaking country. There obviously are local languages as well, but I got by entirely just speaking French. And on the way back, we actually had a layover that was long enough in Paris that I was able to go out into France again. So I visited France a second time, but it was literally for about 6 hours. I think even in the cases where I do visit somewhere where I don't speak the language, I would like to probably try to learn a little bit of the language. Just feels a little bit more comfortable, I guess, for me. How is your Italian going? Io posso parlare in italiano. Ho finito l'una nera. Ho capito 75% senza sottotitoli. Devo parlare con un tutor e mi piacerebbe leggere molto in italiano questo anno, ma io sono sicuro di parlare in italiano, anche se io non posso parlare molto in italiano. Similarly, and I'm very sorry about this, I'm really bad at reading a lot in Bulgarian currently. Как беше прогреса ти с българския език тази година? Доволна ли си с него? Да и не. Аз мога говоря на български, но mnogo trudno I don't even know how to say the rest. I don't feel like I made a lot of progress in Bulgarian. I definitely did, considering I can now say anything, but it doesn't feel like a huge amount of progress. So I am happy with the fact that I can stumble through a diary in Bulgarian and I can say a little bit and write a little bit, but overall I'm not overwhelmingly happy with it. I still have a lot that I would like to do in Bulgarian, so really I think it's just motivating me to continue to get better with it. Y por español es lo mismo que en septiembre. Me gusta mucho mi tutora. Puedo comprender el idioma, pero es muy difícil para mí por hablar en español. Muy difícil. Oh! No puedo hacerlo, pero es mejor, ¿no? And finally, my thoughts on fake polyglots. Overall, I find it difficult and uncomfortable to refer to anyone as a fake polyglot or think of anyone as a fake polyglot at this point in time. For me, my levels are often not the same across the board, and so with YouTube or a blog post or something like that, you're limited to kind of one way of showing your language level. So on YouTube, for example, we can only show each other our language levels through speaking. So in theory, I could be a C2 level in 30 languages when it comes to reading, and that might be my goal as well. That might be the only thing that I care about. But the second that I start speaking on here, I might sound really bad. And it would be quick and easy to say that I therefore am a fake polyglot, but that might not be the case, because if you can read at a C2 level in 30 languages, you're probably not that much of a fake polyglot. And in that sense, it goes the other way of there are also people that only focus on speaking, and if they can speak 15 languages at a C2 level but can't do anything else in it, does that make them a fake polyglot? Does that make them a real polyglot? Are they more or less of a polyglot than the person that can read those languages? And so with people's levels not always being consistent and YouTube only showcasing one of those skills, and people having different goals with how many languages they study, and different goals with levels, and different goals with how they want to speak, and all of those sorts of things, I think it's hard to say who is and who isn't a fake polyglot, especially when being a polyglot is something we don't necessarily have an exact definition for, so to say that someone is fake or real kind of requires there to be a meaning for polyglot as well. Everyone is going to have kind of a different view of what a fake polyglot is, and a lot of that is caused by this need to only see perfect language learning online, and so when people see something that isn't perfect, it makes them a fake. Whether that's because someone can't say a lot in languages, or is obviously reading off of a script, or is struggling to learn a language, it makes them a fake. And in some cases, yes, I think people are lying or exaggerating about their levels, and I do think that that is obviously dishonest and should stop. I wish people weren't trying to just make money off of this kind of thing and would just be authentic. But I think it happens just across the board in a ton of different ways, and I think overall what I would love to see is kind of a shift where instead of wanting to see perfect language learning, people wanted to see authentic language learning. And instead of seeking out the fakes in the community, it was more of just appreciating where people are at in their language journey, and I think that that would start to shift people who are trying to come across as the best at language learning away from that. And it would also make it so that people that are maybe on a slower or more trouble-filled process with their language learning also felt comfortable sharing their own journeys without feeling like they weren't a good enough polyglot or a fake polyglot, etc. I think it's more of a systematic issue than just certain people exaggerating about their level. I think a lot of it comes down to looking at why someone would want to exaggerate about their level and why other people who are not exaggerating about their level are also called fakes, because I see it across the board. Overall though, I'm guessing that a lot of this question is specifically asking about those people that are kind of clearly exaggerating their levels or number of languages in order to sell a product. And in those cases, I really wish that those videos, those blog posts, those people did not continue. Not just for the dishonesty, but honestly mainly because of how disheartening it can be to other people that are learning languages especially for the first time. I see comments on those videos often where people are like, oh my gosh, this person speaks this number of languages at this level, and I'm only just barely working on my Spanish. Language learning is hard, and only seeing people get to a level that feels impossible for you to reach in a time period that is so much shorter than yours can just make you feel a little bit like a failure, or like you're not doing well enough, or like that person is way smarter, or that there's an inborn talent needed or something like that. And I think that is the opposite of what us as people who are passionate about languages should be striving for. But I don't think you're ever going to see me trying to call someone out as a fake polyglot or trying to blame any specific person for these problems, because I don't know everyone's full language story, and I also think that it's a little bit on all of us. And so instead, I'm just going to continue with Polyglot Progress and hopefully being kind of the antithesis of fake polyglotism online. I'm not here to sell myself or a product or anything about my language learning is better than it is. I'm here to show exactly what it's like for me, good and bad, and hopefully motivate you through that. And on that note, I am going to get going. So again, if you asked a question and I didn't get to it in this video, I will respond to you in the comments or on Instagram or wherever you asked the question. This is going to be the last video of 2020, so I will see you next year, and remember, practice makes progress.